Welcome back. In this video, we're going to walk through the complete purchase order PO cycle, all the way from creating a PO to preparing for supplier payment. Today, we're specifically working with a foreign currency purchase order, so you'll also see how the system handles currency exchange and vendor relationships across borders. Let's dive right in. We'll begin by heading into the purchase order application, and from there, we'll create a new PO by clicking on the Add button. We're creating a standard order today. While the system also supports purchase plans, we're not using one in this example. That part will be covered in a separate demo. If we were using a plan, we'd have to select the plan number, define the period, and so on. But since we're going with a standard PO, we can move forward by entering the quotation number. The quotation date comes up automatically as the system date, though you can adjust it if needed. Next, we select the order issuing unit. This refers to the business unit that is responsible for placing and managing the purchase order. Then, we choose the receiving warehouse where the materials will be delivered. This gives us clarity on where the stock is headed. For this example, we're placing an order with a vendor named Caterpillar Thailand. Although the vendor is based in Thailand, their transaction currency is set to USD, making this a foreign currency order. While they operate from Thailand, they prefer to conduct transactions in US dollars. In our system, the base currency for this scenario is Saudi Riyal. When we select the vendor, the system identifies the associated currency. If the system already has an up-to-date exchange rate for USD, it will automatically populate it. Otherwise, it defaults to 1, or may even appear blank. In this case, we manually enter the exchange rate as 3.75, ensuring accurate conversion between US dollars and our base currency, the Saudi Riyal. Now we move to item selection. The system allows us to either view all items or only those that have a vendor-item relationship. In this demo, we'll view all item to keep it flexible. Once the item list appears, we can pick what we want to include in the order. Next, we define payment terms. In this case, it's 50% advance and 50% on delivery. If needed, we can also enter down payment references or payment notes, which can be updated later once payment is processed. We also select the delivery terms, for example, to be billed, to outline the shipping agreement between buyer and vendor. Now it's time to define the delivery date. This is an important field as it sets expectations for when the vendor should supply the material. In our example, we've selected May 16th as the expected delivery date. If applicable, we can also add freight charges. These are the costs the vendor might bill for transporting the goods. Additionally, there's a remarks section where the author of the PO can include special instructions or internal notes for reference. Since this demo doesn't involve an approval workflow, we'll proceed to create the purchase order without triggering any approvals. However, in a real-world setup, electronic approvals can be enabled and customized through the transaction governance settings. We'll explore that process in another video. With all header details completed, we now save the PO and move on to adding line items, the actual goods or services being ordered. To begin adding items to the purchase order, we click the Add button, which opens up the item entry section. In this example, we're selecting from all available items, not just those specifically linked to the vendor. That's because during the PO creation, in the item selection field, we chose all items instead of vendor items. This gives us broader flexibility to pick any item from the catalog, regardless of vendor association. We begin by picking our first item, for example, a part from the Caterpillar line. Once selected, we enter the quantity, say 1 unit in this case. The system automatically fetches the last quoted price from the vendor relationship records. This price reflects the vendor's most recent quote, ensuring accuracy and consistency. Of course, if a new quote has been received, we can manually override the price to reflect the latest rate. Otherwise, the system uses the default value stored in the relationship configuration. Next, we confirm or adjust the delivery date for the item. Additional details like item specifications can be entered if required, for instance, if those need to be printed on the PO. We then save the item, and if needed, repeat the process to add more products. Once all items are added, the PO is complete. In this scenario, because no approval is required, the PO is automatically marked as approved. However, if approvals were required, the system would mark it as draft and route it for electronic review based on your governance setup. With the PO approved, we've successfully created a foreign currency purchase order. We're now ready to proceed to the next phase of the procure-to-pay cycle, receiving the materials. We'll cover this in the next video, walking through how to process material receipt and continue down the procurement cycle towards vendor invoicing and payment. Thanks for watching, and see you in the next walkthrough.